Hello and welcome back once again to Movie Reviews. Turns out the problem with my car wasn't what I thought it was, so it is still safe to drive. It does need some more work done to it than what I've done to it in the past couple days, but for the most part I can still go see movies, so that's one good thing. I went to 2 different theaters and watched 4 movies total, spent my entire day off doing it, and yeah, so I'm going to do some reviews, and I might go see a couple more movies today, or I might go see them tomorrow, because it involves driving all the way back across town again, and sitting there for 4 hours, and watching more movies, then coming back, and then probably doing the same thing again tomorrow. In other news, I don't have to drive all the way across town to see movies anymore. Turns out the theater up the road that I said is normally like $12-13 for a single movie ticket, well, during matinee it's only $9. Beyond that it's like $12.50 or something. However, they've now started doing a discount Tuesday. So Tuesdays, all movies, unless they're special events like, a Fathom event or something, are only $6. So where I was driving all the way downtown to the other theater to pay like $5.25, or I think on Tuesdays they got like $4 discount, I can now go up here, which is a lot closer to my house if there is something wrong with the car. It is technically within walking distance if the weather's right, and I can see movies up there for just $2 more. So that's a plus. I don't have to go all the way downtown to see Star Wars. I had planned on going and seeing 3 movies on Tuesday when it's discount day. However, the times didn't flow right, and then I was going to go see a couple movies yesterday, which their times did flow right. And I was like, okay, I'll go see those. And then I was like, well, how am I going to figure out the other one? Because I want to see them in a certain order, and the times aren't flowing right. And then I realized, well, I could go see the first one before I go over to the other theater and see the other 3. And that's what I ended up doing. So the first movie, now that I've rambled for 2 minutes, that I got to see today, finally, is Creed. The sequel to Rocky, let's see, this will be 5, 6, 7, just Rocky 7, or Creed 1, whatever you want to call it. So I never got around to seeing Rocky Balboa. It's still on my list of things that I want to see, but I did see Rocky 1 through 5. And I don't care what Sylvester Stallone says, I liked the way 5 ended. Sort of. I can see his points with why he didn't like 5, but at the same time I kind of liked 5. It didn't really tie that well into Rocky Balboa from the little bit I know about Rocky Balboa, but it seems like maybe that's because he's ignoring 5 and just going from like 4 into Rocky Balboa, sort of. I don't know. So, although you kind of have to have Rocky 5 in order to realize how he got to where he's at in Rocky Balboa and now in Creed. Yeah. Anyway, you'll understand that once you watch the movie. So, what do I think of the movie? I liked it, but it wasn't really something necessary. I guess passing the torch on to the next generation so that Rocky, Sylvester Stallone can finally start stepping down from these roles, but the legacy can live on. Yeah, it kind of makes sense. Although I don't necessarily think Michael B. Jordan was the best person they could have got for this role. I don't mind his acting. It's just I don't think he really has the look for some of the roles he's been getting. I mean, he's got a decent build, but like Apollo and Sylvester Stallone, they looked like they were chiseled out of marble. Like that Greek god statue, like all that. And basically, the fighters in this movie looked like flyweight, if that makes sense. Like, honestly, Michael B. Jordan has the best build out of everyone in this movie, which is sad because he's not that big of a guy. And like the guy that he fights at the end, the champ, is like so out of shape looking. Like he has no definition at all. And they say he's the light heavyweight champion, but seriously, I don't know. I guess UFC's made it to where you don't have to be in shape to be a fighter anymore. But yeah, so I mean, he's got a decent build, but when I think of the legacy of like the way Rocky and Apollo and Clubber Lang and Ivan Drago and all of them looked. I mean, they were pretty jacked, you know, and like now all these guys are just like, hey, I'm a little flyweight guy and I'm going to live up to the reputation of like a Rocky Balboa, you know. It's like, yeah, Rocky was billed to be a smaller guy, you know, and that was more short in stature than muscle. Yeah, so I think like at one point in the movie, he's trying to cut his weight down to like 175, and I've been 175. I know I don't look it now because I'm not, but in college I was 175, and yeah, I looked big, but at the same time, compared to somebody like, you know, that's built, I still looked small. So it just depends on who you put yourself around. When I was around other people that were slightly smaller than me, yeah, I looked fucking huge. But when you're around people that, you know, like when you go to the gym and you got them big steroid freaks in there, it's like, yeah, I'm freaking tiny. I'm like a toothpick compared to these guys. So, yeah, that's just a minor gripe I had with this one. I think they could have got a lot better guys to fill out these roles, but at the same time, it was supposed to be that he's coming up through the amateur ranks and he just happens to get a title shot, kind of like what happened in the first Rocky. That's my other main downfall with this, is it's almost a retelling of the Rocky story. It's like Rocky for the next generation, and let's try and make it a little bit more urban, which it doesn't need, seriously. Like, I don't mind, you know, urban culture in films, but Hollywood doesn't know how to do it right. They overdo it, and it just comes off as, like, ridiculous. So, anyway, let's get into the story. I think I said that I liked it, so yeah. Let's get into the story now, so if you don't want to know what happens, skip ahead towards the end of the video to get the star rating and all that. So we start out with these kids in a boys' home, or I think it's a boys' home. It almost looks like, what it starts out looking like is kids being taken through, like, scared straight, like they're in a prison, and like they're being led through, and then something happens, the alarm goes off, and they'll have to sit against the wall and put their hands up. So at first I'm like, what is this, a scared straight thing? And then it's like you go out to see what the alarm's going off for and what everyone's running to, and it's these other kids fighting. So obviously it's a boys' home, correctional facility type of thing, like a juvie lockup or whatever. And it's these two boys fighting, and they get broken up, and then the woman comes in, and she's like, do you know who I am, blah, blah, blah. And first she asks him, why was he fighting? He goes, because the guy said something about my mom. And she's like, you know, I'm sorry about losing your mom. You know, I lost somebody too. And she mentions that it was his father, and he's like, I didn't have a father. She goes, no, you had a father, but he passed before you were born. So then she reveals who she is, and it's Apollo Creed's wife. And she asks him, you know, do you want to come live with me? And this is one thing I don't remember from the Rocky films, unless it was revealed in Rocky Balboa. But, and honestly, it could have been in the first Rocky. It's been so long since I've actually sat down and watched any of the Rocky films, like, all the way through, that I honestly don't remember. But apparently this kid is the result of Apollo having an affair. Which, what I remember from all the films was Apollo being a family man. I remember him having his wife. I remember him having a couple kids at one point, because he was in his office talking about something. The kids came up and like hugged him before they went to bed or something. So I remember he had a couple kids. And then I was like, so he was always like this strong, family-oriented type of person from what I remember of the film, so when did he supposedly have this affair? But apparently it happened somewhere in the universe. I could just be remembering it wrong. And from that affair was born a child, which the kid was born, I guess, just after he died. Kid's name is Adonis, because, you know, Apollo, Adonis, whatever. So Apollo Creed's wife says, you know, technically you are his son. He was my husband. You don't have anyone. I'd like you to come live with me. So she basically raises this kid as her own. He calls her mom at a couple points, but, you know, it's not his birth mother, but he calls her mom. So she raises him, gets him a good job and everything, but he wants to be a fighter like his dad. I guess he's trying to get his brother, I want to say they said it was his brother. It's like Apollo's other son or whatever, who's running Apollo's gym now. And Michael B. Jordan's character is trying to get him to train him properly, like train me in the style of our father, whatever. And he just doesn't want to do it. He's like, no, you don't have what it takes. You've been privileged your whole life. A lot of these kids come in off the streets and they have to fight for everything they got, and you're just here trying to, fight because you want to fight. Which, really, why does it matter? If he's willing to train and do it properly, why not let him, right? So he's like, I'll challenge any of the guys you got in here because I know I can beat them. So one guy comes up and it's like, he fights the first guy and he wins, and then he goes, who's next? And then this other guy comes up who I guess was like an Olympic gold medalist in boxing. So the kid kind of panics a little bit, gets in the fight with him anyway, and gets knocked out. So then, his brother or whatever's like, see, this is what I was telling you, man. You just don't have it. And sends him on his way. But yeah, back to what I was saying before, Apollo Creed's wife had gotten him like a job at this firm, and he'd worked hard all the way through it. He had actually gotten a promotion to like being almost an executive, and he turns in his resignation because he doesn't want to do it. He just wants to fight. Well, it turns out while he was working this job, he'd been going down to Tijuana and fighting and winning money for it. And then he went back to have the confrontation with his brother at the gym, got knocked out. Then he leaves because he decides to go to Philadelphia and look up Rocky Balboa. He's like, Rocky and my dad were kind of friends. It's if anyone can train me, he can. So he goes and looks up Rocky, and Rocky's like, I don't do the fight thing anymore. I run my restaurant, Adrian's, blah, blah, blah. But he goes, and he's like, well, I'm going to go train at your gym. He goes, that's fine. The guys down there are good guys, but I haven't been in there in years. So he goes down to the gym, and the gym really is like, well, you can train here, but we're not going to train you. You can just kind of come, most guys just come in and work out on their own. So then he goes back to Rocky, and he's like, I can't get any training down there. He's busy doing his number one guy, and everyone else is just kind of there training on their own. I need some type of guidance. So Rocky agrees to, like, I'll give you some training regimens, and that's it. So he writes down some stuff for him. He's like, here, do all this. Then some other stuff is going on, and then Rocky's like, oh, I'll go down to the gym and check him out, see how he's doing. And Rocky stops in the gym, and like the guy who's running the gym now, who's this old friend of Rocky's, he's like, hey, I've been trying to get you to come back in for years, help me train my kid here. And Rocky's like, I'll think about it. And then he starts talking to Michael B. Jordan's character and starts training him like right away. So then, like, this guy's kind of like, well, what the fuck, Rocky? It's like, we've been friends. I just asked you to help me train my kid, and you're going to, like, shine me for this new guy? And doesn't tell me, this is Apollo Creed's kid. I kind of owe it to him. He just kind of keeps it secret. He's wanting to make it the name on his own because he's not using the name Creed at this point. He's using his birth mother's name, which is Johnson. So Rocky starts training with him, and the guy who's running mixed gym now is, like, says, I need someone to go up against him for the, to make him look good, because he's like 17-0. I need him to, like come in and do one more fight. So, and that he only gets that shot because he's been training with Rocky. So he's like, you got the skill of Rocky Balboa. Come in, fight my kid. Just as someone he can spar with, but then they're gonna actually have a match. And this isn't for the title. This is just for show. Rocky doesn't want to do it. But then Adonis is like, I want to do it. And Rocky's like, well, if you really want to, okay, but we're not going to train here because it's stupid for you to train at the same place where your opponent trains. So he takes him over to this other gym across town. He's got this whole new group of guys that's training him. And he's like, Rocky, I thought you were going to train me. He goes, I am. I'm going to be here, but, I'm old. I can't do the stuff that these guys can do. So Rocky's just kind of sitting back mentoring and, like, giving instructions and everything. And it works its way up, and everything's going good. Then we find out Rocky's sick, which they reveal in the trailer. So spoilers if you don't want to know how he's sick. But he got 3, 2, 1, spoiler. So Rocky has cancer. And they've said they've caught it early enough that they want him to go into chemo and fight it. And he's like, that's the same way my wife died. She tried to fight it. I saw her, just fall apart through chemo. He goes, I don't want to do it. So then Adonis kind of throws out you got me out here fighting. If I'm going to fight, you got to fight too, because I need you around. So Rocky's like, shit. So they have a little falling out at one point, but then that kind of brings them back together. Then at some point, everyone finds out that he's Apollo Creed's kid. So then they're like, okay, well, is he going to live up to his father's name, or is he just name only? So he ends up, out of pure coincidence, because they find out he's a Creed, ends up getting a shot at the world light heavyweight title or something, because the guy who was originally going to fight in that match got into an altercation with the champion, got his jaw broke, and is suing the World Boxing Commission. So he's out of the fight. So they're like, we need someone to fill it in, and he's a Creed. We'll sell it just on the name alone. So they agree to do it, and then we go through the training montage that we always have. We come up to the big fight. They speed through the 12 rounds, get to the end, and I was hoping they would go with the route that they went, but at the same time, I was like, the way Hollywood is now, everyone's got to have the happy ending, which is one thing that the original Rocky didn't have, was a happy ending, because, spoilers if you haven't seen the first Rocky, Rocky loses the fight at the end, but he puts up a hell of a fight. And I was like, honestly, it would be very poetic if they went that route with Creed, like he actually loses the fight, but he puts up such a good fight that he earns everyone's respect, and he can come back later and go towards the titles like Rocky did in Rocky 2 when he got his rematch. I was like, but knowing the way Hollywood's going, they're going to want to do the mega happy ending, so he's, because he's a Creed, he's going to win. And spoilers, if you don't want to know which one of those they went for, 3, 2, 1, spoilers, Adonis loses. And I was kind of shocked that they did it, because I was expecting him to win, but at the same time I was happy they did it, but at the same time I was disappointed, because I was like, all they're doing is fully copying Rocky, because that's the same thing that happened with Rocky. He was this little bum kid who was doing fights on the side. He got called up for a world title match, and he had to convince this old trainer, Mickey, to train him. He was a little rebellious against it. Mickey got sick. He started training better, and it was basically kind of like mashing the first 3 Rocky movies into one, almost. But if they did that, Apollo would have won. Or, I keep calling him Apollo. Adonis would have won. But in this one, he loses, so they stayed true to the original Rocky story, which I liked and disliked at the same time. But at the same time, I liked that they didn't go with the mega happy ending of him winning. So he lasts all 12 rounds, and then it's the decision. They announced that the champion's still the champion. But then everyone's like, hey, you did good in there, respect, whatever. You are Apollo's kid. And that's kind of the end of the movie. They go to, like, Rocky and Adonis, like, walking up the steps at the end. And, yeah, that's kind of where the movie ends. There's a bit more to it other than that. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I skipped over that pads out the film. Did this movie need to be 2 hours and 10 minutes? Not really. They could have shaved quite a bit out of this and still had to be a decent movie. Actually, probably would have paced a little bit better. Like, they were trying to hit too many of the Rocky tropes. Like, obviously you got to have the train montage, but then they're like, okay, well, he's going to be running through the street and have all these guys following him. And they just had to add in the extra time to nail that. And it's like, you could have fit it in so much better. It seems so forced. Like, he's jogging down the street, and then he sees this guy. He goes, hey, you going to see Rock? He's like, yeah, come on. And then, like, as he's walking by, he's, like, waving at everybody, like, yeah, come on, follow me. And he's, like, running and running and running. Then he gets to where Rocky's at. He's, like, jumping up. And it's like, I understand that you're trying to pay homage to the original Rocky doing that, but it was so hammered in. You could have fit that in a lot better than what you did. Anyway, so what was I saying? I don't even remember now. Yeah, so that's kind of where the movie ends. I liked it, but I disliked it. Did it need to be made? Not really, other than to carry on the next generation, because now if they make a Creed 2, they're probably going to have Rocky finally die, and then he'll have to go on and do something else. But then, like, who does he fall back to? Because the thing was, he had Mickey in the first one. He fought Apollo. In the second one, he had his rematch against Apollo. In the third one, he was up against Clubber Lang, who was younger and faster than Apollo. Mickey died, so Apollo was like, I'll train you to fight the way I fight. So Apollo trained him. Then in the next one, Apollo died, and he had to get revenge for Apollo. Then in the fifth one, he was training a new person instead of training his son, who was interested in boxing at the time, but then by Rocky Balboa, he wasn't. So then he was training the new guy who turned against him, and they had a street fight at the end. No real actual in-the-ring bout. So Adonis is training with Rocky. So in the next one, if Rocky dies, then who does Adonis fall back to for his new training for his continuing adventure if they're going to keep going with these Creed films? Or is this just where it ends? It's like, hey, we got a new Creed, Rocky's story's done, it's off the table. Or maybe when Rocky dies, that'll be the end of it. I don't know. So, yeah, it was kind of an unnecessary film other than to pass the torch, but at the same time, they can squeeze at least one, maybe two more movies out of it, but I don't know where they would go with it. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on Creed. As far as a star rating on this one, like I said, it could have been paced a little bit better. It didn't need to be as long as it was. They tried to hit too many of the Rocky tropes. As much as I liked the ending, I disliked it, but for odd reasons. Yeah, on this one, I'm probably going to just have to go... I'm going to have to go with a 3 on this one. Like, there was just really nothing that sucked me into it other than, hey, it's another Rocky movie. Let's see how good it is. Yeah, but it ended up just being a rehash of Rockies 1, 2, and 3, all kind of crammed into one movie. They tried to modernize it too much, urbanize it too much. It's like, hey, we got a black lead. Let's make everything urban. It's like, you're already in Philadelphia. You don't need to urbanize everything. So, yeah, it had its flaws, but at the same time, it was an okay watch. Especially if you like Rocky films. It's just the first 3 rehashed in a 2 hour and 10-minute movie. Yeah, so I'd give it like a middle-of-the-road of 3. So yeah, that's it for Creed. Wow, this is actually a bit long of a review, but a couple minutes of that was me telling you that my car was fine. So that's it for this episode. I will be back shortly with another episode, but you'll probably see it tomorrow, depending on when this goes up. So until then, as always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the movies.